A quarter of the world's population is now living under some form of lockdown due to coronavirus. More than 3 billion people.
Now,
some of the millions still stuck at home.
Without a
Last night, President
The
Macron
largest
announced a general
coronavirus lockdown in the world is happening right now.
Going into lockdown.
Since the birth of industrialization in modern society, time is always seen as a singular big brother. We have come to view time as a number, and we need to meet that number. We've got our deadline to meet, but our lifespan is within that time frame, which is calculated into numbers that are calculated into our ages and calculated into what we need to achieve by those numbers. Time has just been turned into a number. Time initially is just, and within those numbers, the shadow of lightness fades and brightens during the day. Big brother linear effect of having to meet that deadline. And got so deeply ingrained into us, got so deeply ingrained into our psyche, this big brother being the time, where we managed to create our well-being, so-called well-being, productivity in relation to consuming and producing, consuming and producing, consuming and producing, letting go of who we are. Following these numbers within this clock, but our deep engraving of this thing called time was actually something that wasn't time. Time is more of a metaphor. Time is more of a metaphysical construct that was connected to these things called numbers, these counting points, these counting objects. And then all of a sudden, one day, in the real world, time stopped. This virus called COVID-19 spread the world. And overnight, the world shut down. Stores were closed, schools were closed, works were closed, everything was closed. And what we were left with, that came knocking on the door, that we drifted so far away from us and put into a box of a metaphor, was time. And she came very awkwardly and very abruptly and very astrally and very obscurely and very uncomfortably and very, their presence was there. And we were all sitting in our beds, not knowing what to do. The world has shut down. Our linear notion of so-called time had frozen. This perceived emptiness, this perceived void, this perceived that we were actually in abundance, or an abundance of time. For the first time we were sitting not at a T-junction, not at a cul-de-sac, but we were sitting in a tree junction with different branches of how we could utilize our time and how we must utilize our time. Otherwise, we will die. Apart from this COVID disease, we would die of not being able to get bread on the table. We would die from being out in the cold, from not getting the rent in. We would die from our basic needs. And we would die, most importantly, from our basic mental health requirements. Because our time with our loved ones, we are social cognitive beings, and the time that we had with our support and our love, with our loved ones, with our family, with our friends, our partners, was gone. Because they were actually sitting in time for the first time. And then within our nature as human beings, we know how to survive. We metamorphosize ourselves into our realities. And abruptly, surely, but slowly but surely, maybe abruptly, maybe overnight, maybe things change. Our schedules are changed. Cutting our time to get to work, cutting our time to pick up the kids, cutting our time to get groceries, cutting our time to get. We were just sitting. Solutions started occurring. Communications. People started working at home. People also started having time on their hands to start thinking. They had nothing but time. That's one thing that the COVID pandemic lockdown taught humanity, is that we do have time. Time is inevitable. Even if we go on the streets with no clothing, we still have time. How we utilize and how we divided that time to create our own support for survival. It's what occurred.